In this edition of Art Rocks, a Louisiana native explores primitive art in his sculpture.
Primitive in the sense oceanic, Australian, Aborigine, and Native American. God, it just was struck by lightning kind of thing.
We see a photographic road trip that spans decades.
I'm hoping that I can transmit my feelings, my emotions, in terms of the print, so that the person can get the same response that I did.
Learn what makes a great pianist truly great.
And this whole world was opened up to me, where I learned about all this great music.
And a serious diagnosis fuels an artistic surge.
You need something to bring you back, and in my case, it was painting.
It's all ahead on this edition of Art Rocks.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Hello, I'm James Fox Smith, publisher of Country Roads magazine, and this is Art Rocks. We begin our show with a profile of sculptor John Geldersma. For over 20 years, this Louisiana native has drawn upon primitive archetypes while creating art for a contemporary world. Here's a look.
It's been described as contemporary primitivism, contemporary tribalism. You can see it's a very kind of a tribal, primitive influence. And also, too, using like archetypal imagery as primitive cultures would do, and whereas that universal kind of collectivism.
Before sculptor John Geldersma was inspired to create the spirit poles, prayer sticks, and masks that he's so well known for, he was immersed in the cultural richness of South Louisiana's French and Creole communities.
My mother and family were from Golden Meadows, Bayou-Lafourche, and her maiden name is Shitamachi, so in a way that's what I would identify with.
Geldersma grew up on the west bank of New Orleans, where he became familiar with the ritualism of Catholicism and the spectacle of Mardi Gras.
And always interested in art as far as I can remember, even when I was 6 years old. I was encouraged by friends to maybe take some art lessons and pursue it, because I didn't grow up in a family that really were artists. So I went to, without knowing where to go, went into the French Quarter and to this art store. There was a sign that they had lessons, so the wife taught lessons on Saturdays. And then I worked in the frame store to pay for it. And I never forget, it was like $2.50 a lesson. And I made 50 cents an hour and worked from 12 to 5. And I primarily painted then for years, all through high school.
In college, Geldersma spent his initial year at LSU, then transferred to Lafayette, to what was then called USL.
And then I took a sculpture class, and that's where it really began, because in that sculpture class I was exposed to people like Brancusi and African art, primitive art. I say primitive in the sense oceanic, Australian, Aborigine, even the Native American. And God, it just was struck by lightning kind of thing.
His admiration for African art began to influence his artistic expression. With a fine arts degree from USL, Geldersma attended Rutgers in New Jersey for his MFA. The proximity to New York had its advantages, but he was drawn back to Louisiana with an offer to teach at his alma mater.
Began teaching at USL in 1970. Thought maybe I'd be there 4 or 5 years and move back to New York. Then he eventually bought an old cotton gin that came up for sale, which was nothing. It was like $3,500 for this incredible old cotton gin that was still full of equipment. And that sort of sealed my fate of staying. I have always primarily worked with wood. A lot of the things I've done had to do with a series of poles and groups, which was really influenced from living in Lafayette and looking at the dead cypress trees in the basin, and always wanted to do something with them. And then being very poor at that time, had no really money for materials, wood was very plentiful on the banks of the Chafalaya and even in the Mississippi.
From salvaged wood, he fashioned spirit poles, horned shamans, shields, masks, guardian figures, and dancing birds, interpreting these archetypal figures in a modern and personal way. The tools of his trade include chainsaws, sanders, and torches, and the selective addition of color when he paints the sculpted wood.
In a piece like in the background, the black is burn, is pecan wood in this case. But I'll start off with chainsaws, and you can see the piece in the background with the big slits, and then go to side grinders and all the way down. I used to do a lot of hand sanding. Now I have an orbital sander. But then, yeah, there's a process I do where I burn and oil and then burnish to get the beautiful polished look to it. And we can see still the grain of the wood.
After retiring from teaching, Geldersma applied himself full-time to the production of his art, creating works for 10 galleries across the country and overseas, and organizing as many as 6 shows of his work in a year. He also made a transition, moving from the old cotton gin near Lafayette to Santa Fe, New Mexico, to a home he and his wife designed. The wood he commonly uses today is aspen, salvaged from forests nearby. At this point in his career, he's come to a crossroads.
I feel as though this was sort of like the culmination or encapsulated what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And now I'm ready to move into another direction.
Geldersma admits he'll continue to sculpt totems, masks, and shamans, but at a reduced pace, allowing time for him to develop and explore other artistic ideas. The current themes that interest him include natural forces as an active part of the work.
I did something in '84 for the New Orleans World's Fair where I literally built a boat that was 8 feet long of aluminum and had a cylinder in it. And it was sort of a note in the bottle kind of thing. And I launched it in the Gulf Stream and calculated it would take about 2 years and predicted it might be in Reach, Ireland, because that's the main end of the Gulf Stream, the strongest flow. And surely enough, 25 months later, I got a call from a guy in Galway Bay, a kid, 17 years old, found a boat on the beach. And I want to do more of those kinds of things.
To see more of his sculpture, visit johngeldersma.com. Now, let's take a look at some of the upcoming arts events happening across Louisiana. For more information on these events, visit our website at lpb.org/artrocks. And to find more arts activities, check out countryroadsmag.com. Next, photographer Tom Ferderbar of Wisconsin, who studied with the legendary Ansel Adams, has spent the last 40 years focusing his lens on the landmarks of Route 66 and the landscapes of the American West. Ferderbar's decades of work clearly capture his passion for photography.
I enjoy shooting the West. I enjoy shooting mountains, scenery. I also enjoy, like Route 66, the memory of it, the old dilapidated homes, beat up cars. I don't know why, but it's in my DNA to like that subject matter. My name is Tom Ferderbar, and I'm a retired advertising and fine art photographer. I wanted to be a photographer from the age of 12 when my sister gave me a box camera. I really found it a nice way to express my emotions. I'm better, I think, at doing it visually than in words. It's a strange thing. All I knew is I wanted to be a photographer. When I finished high school, I applied at the Milwaukee Journal to be a photographer. And of course, with a high school education, they wouldn't accept me, but they gave me a job as a copy boy, which was an editorial assistant. $18 a week. I worked there about 1.5 years, but they kept telling me, Tom, you got to go to college if you want to be a photographer here. So I went to University of Wisconsin, graduated from there, and moved on to spend 1 year at the Leighton School of Art. My personal photography is, right now, it's devoted to shooting the Tetons National Park and Route 66. It's difficult to shoot the old road. It's pretty hard to make a good picture of the old road. But I enjoy shooting the older buildings as they're dilapidating. And in a way, there'll always be the ability to shoot Route 66 because the buildings along the way, some of them are decaying more and more and more, and some of the newer ones today will be decaying in 10 or 12 years. So there's always a new supply of old buildings and old cars and so on to photograph. So it isn't like you've exactly run out of subjects. My plan normally is to say shoot one state. Okay, let's say I'm going to go out this trip for 10 or 12 days and I'll shoot New Mexico. So I'll drive to the edge of New Mexico and then start shooting. Might take me 3 or 4 or 5 days to cross New Mexico. Then I'll come back, because coming back you see different things. The lighting is different. You see subjects from a different angle. So I'll shoot New Mexico coming back too. And then if I see something in some of the other states, Missouri or Kansas or Illinois, I'll shoot them too. But basically I'll go out and shoot one state. I like black and white for some fine art subjects. For Route 66, I think I like the color better. Ansel Adams is probably my primary mentor. I learned about him, I guess that would be shortly after I finished college in the 50s, and was lucky enough to get an invitation to one of his seminars. It was his 3rd seminar, and he only accepted 20 students, and the seminar was 10 days long, but it was a tremendous experience working with him. Just a marvelous experience. And that's one I'll never forget. We were out there one day near Mariposa, California, photographing some barns. And then I saw near the bottom of the barn a cluster of barley growing up in front of the weathered wood of the barn. And I said, that'd be a beautiful shot. But boy, it's going to look just like Ansel Adams shot it, and he's here. And if I set up my camera, he's going to say, can't you do anything original, So I set it up to make a horizontal cropping, which I knew was wrong because it should be vertical. Everything was going that way, and you shouldn't try to make something vertical into a horizontal. But anyways, I set it up. Okay, Ansel came by a little while later, and he bent down under the focusing cloth, which is that black cloth that covers the camera, and he looked into the camera for a while, and he took the cloth off, and he looked at me, and he said, Tom, don't you think that should be a vertical? So that really made me happy, because that's what I wanted. So of course I took the back of the camera, turned it, made my vertical shot, and that's one of the shots that I'm most proud of from that series. His philosophy was a camera is designed and the lens is designed to make things sharp and to show detail. That's kind of what I took away from him. Pictures should be sharp from the foreground to the distance if you can, and you should have a full range of values from solid black to pure white. There's such a great variety there at Yosemite. Tremendous just variety of subjects to shoot. When I make a photograph, my goal is to have the viewer experience the same emotion when they look at the photograph that I did when I saw the subject. I'm hoping that I can transmit my feelings, my emotions, in terms of the print so that the person can get the same response that I did.
You can see more of Ferderbar's photographs at tomferderbar.com. Pianist Richard Glazier was only 9 when he first saw the film Girl Crazy, and that was the moment when a lifelong passion for the American classics was ignited. Glazier takes us inside his Sacramento home to share his amazing collection of film history and his love for music.
One of the ways I was really introduced to this wonderful genre of the American song and the American popular musical is my parents, they bought this projector for me, and in those days, you could go to the public library and with just a library card, check out 16 millimeter IB Tech prints of Wizard of Oz, Meet Me in St. Louis, An American in Paris, all the classics for free for 2 days. I went to the public library and I checked out every book, every record I could about the Gershwins, and just started reading all about them and learning so many things about the era. So I have these wonderful memories of sitting in our basement, threading the projector, sitting next to my mom, and this whole world was opened up to me where I learned about all this great music, records that I still have in this house in my collection today.
And your home is filled with these beautiful posters. Look at this one, it's huge.
This is called a 3-sheet of Andy Hardy Meets Debutante. The reason it's called a 3-sheet because there's one sheet here, one sheet here, and one sheet here, and they're glued together.
With, of course, your beloved Judy Garland.
Right. You know, I fell in love with the voice of Judy Garland. I saw Girl Crazy before I saw The Wizard of Oz. And I thought that she was just so beautiful in that movie. She looked so beautiful, and her singing is so tender and lyrical and romantic and just so special.
Richard, your house, every wall is covered with musical moments.
Isn't a home supposed to be surrounded with things that you love? And that's what my wife and I have tried to do in our home. I don't claim that I am the Gershwin interpreter. I play very different than the way Gershwin played. But I think it's wonderful because wouldn't the life be boring if everybody played the same way? I'm just interpreting the music. I'm a conduit between the composer and the audience. As a performer, the music and the respect of the music and the respect of the composer always comes first. When I'm performing, there has to be an element of detachment involved in the performance. Otherwise, if you become totally absorbed, then you lose track of communicating with your audience. There's a part of you that has to be in that front row listening. I would like to think, and I have played for people who knew Ira and were closely associated with him, and would say, Ira would have loved that. I wish Ira was alive to hear you play that. It's my passion. It's my life. I mean, there's nothing that makes me happier than being able to communicate this love to other people. And that's a very special thing because the love in art, again, no matter what it is, whether you're a teacher, whatever it is, you want to achieve a focused energy. That the energy is like a laser beam going out to each individual that's listening to you. Music is something, we can't touch it, we can't feel it, we can't smell it, but it touches our soul and it makes us feel something very special on the inside that elevates us to something that is magical, indeed magical.
To hear more, visit richardglazier.com. Now it's time to celebrate another of Louisiana's treasures. This week we'll examine the artistry of basket making within the native Shitamachi tribe.
The native Shitamachi, meaning people of the many waters, have traditionally inhabited much of what is now coastal Louisiana. Their cultural heritage is connected to places like the Bayou Teche and the Atchafalaya Basin. Intricately designed baskets that the tribe is known for are made of river cane that has been split and peeled. The cane is then dyed and crafted into baskets of many forms and sizes. The tradition of basket making is handed down within families.
Shitamachi basketry is intimately related back to the environment. It reflects the natural world of the Shitamachi that they experienced every day.
And all of the patterns that you see in the baskets are patterns from things around you. You may not realize it, but something like this is pattern in this would be guspi su'u, which is the muscadine rind or peel, which, so the story goes, the muscadine berry, when it's smashed, goes in 4 directions, the skin, and that's where that pattern came from.
Other expressive names include bird's eye, eye of cattle, or mouse tracks.
The designs were named these things in the Shitamachi language. And even though the language died out for a while and is being brought back now, those names were retained through the generations, and that shows the importance of Shitamachi basketry as a physical and visible expression of Shitamachi culture.
According to the tribe's cultural department, only about 4 active basket weavers remain in the tribe. Efforts are being made to document the method of basket making and to increase the number of tribal members that have that knowledge in order to retain this craft as a Louisiana treasure.
In our final segment, we meet Chuck Weber, a distinguished portrait painter with an impressive portfolio. Up until 14 years ago, Weber was spending his days in an office, building a career at a Wisconsin ad agency. We learn what drove him back to his art.
I paint almost anything that I think tells a story. I love telling a story with my work. I love having people go into a work and imagine that they see a story within the piece. My name is Chuck Weber. I'm a portrait and figurative fine artist. I've always been in love with art, but figures and portraits always add visual interest. They're evocative. They add more to every scene that I paint. About 14 years ago, I got cancer, and it was a rather serious cancer, stage 3 to 4, and I had I needed to fight that battle. I was not going to be able to. I ran an advertising agency at the time, and I couldn't do both. There was just no way I could do both. So I sold my share of the agency and devoted 100% of my attention to fighting the cancer, and I beat the cancer. Although they never say you truly beat cancer. What you've done is you're in remission. But I've been in remission a number of years now, so I can say I've pretty well crossed that bridge. But along the way, as many cancer survivors can tell you, you fight a very hard battle. It's a very difficult emotional, mental, as well as physical battle. And you need something to bring you back. And in my case, it was painting. It was my artwork. Had always been there, and it would come back to take a prominent part in my life. I now paint full-time as a portrait and figurative artist and totally love my work. The one thing that I show, hopefully in my work, is joy. I want to bring color, and I want to bring celebration into the mix. I'm a colorist. I'm what they call a California impressionist. The painters of early California art really enjoyed diving into color and becoming very bold and painterly in their look. And I'm a fan of that style. I very rarely use black. I'll typically use complements of colors, darker complements of colors to darken. For instance, if you want to darken a yellow, instead of using a black, you might use violet, or you might use some blue. You might add some additional color tinges within that. I stumbled upon a number of pieces from Super Bowl I, which was 1967, the Packers playing the Kansas City Chiefs. In that is one of my favorite players, Jimmy Taylor, number 31. And I said, I've got to paint Jimmy Taylor if I have a chance. Plus the famous Packer power sweep, which was one of their almost unstoppable plays. Jimmy Taylor just took the ball from Bart Starr, and he's coming around the left side, and he's being led by Forrest Gregg and Fuzzy Thurston, who are doing the lion's share of the blocking. I connect with them. I think it's a guy thing. We all love the Packers. We all love it's particularly the vintage Packers. Working from photo reference materials, I sketch the piece out, then typically I'll add what they call an underpainting. I'll tone the canvas. In this particular piece, I used a sienna, a reddish tone, reddish orange tone underneath, and that complements a lot of the greens that are coming through on the upper surface. I then start the painting process. I have a tendency in a piece like this to focus on an individual area, in this case, each player, get them pretty well finessed, and then move on and get the whole piece working together, and then finesse some of the details later on. Most of my work is portraiture. I love doing families, I love doing kids. More often it's capturing youth and kids, families, in the act of being themselves, having fun, interacting with each other. In most cases, kids won't pose for a long period of time, so it usually means working from photography. I will oftentimes shoot the photography myself of the kids, for instance, being themselves, interacting, what particular moments capture that magic of the particular subject. So you bring in a lot of different elements from different subjects. Most artists paint too long. You work at it and then suddenly you went, uh-oh, I should not have done that. I should have stopped earlier. By painting live in front when people are watching you, it's very, very good for you as an artist. You have no place to hide. You have no place to go, and that's actually good for you. By doing some of these live paintings, it has taught me to be a much faster painter, to grab a larger brush, to paint quicker, don't linger on the subject. I think over time artists become, when they become more confident, become a little faster. I love my art. I love painting. I'm very passionate about it, and I hope I continue to get better, and I hope my work continues to show progress. And when you finish a piece and you feel good about it, I don't think there's anything that really replaces that.
For more, visit weberportraits.com. And that wraps it up for this edition of Art Rocks. Be sure to drop in online at lpb.org/artrocks, where you can catch up on any episodes you might have missed and find information on upcoming arts events. Until next time, I'm James Fox Smith, and thanks for watching.